The rain came down in sheets that October evening, turning the city into a blur of neon and shadow. I remember the exact moment I first saw her, not at the firm's charity gala where we were formally introduced, but here, in the quiet sanctuary of the law library at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Dr. Natalie Chen stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her reflection ghosted against the glass. She was supposed to be at some medical conference dinner with James Bradford's senior partner, my mentor, her husband. Instead, she was here. Surrounded by legal journals she clearly had no interest in reading. "The Hastings case?" she said, without turning around. Her voice carried that particular quality of someone who'd learned to speak softly in hospital corridors. "James won't stop talking about it. I thought I'd see what all the fuss was about. I should have made an excuse and left. 28 years old, 3 years into my career at Bradford and Associates, and here was the wife of the man who held my future in his hands. But something in the way she stood, their shoulders tense, fingers pressed against the cold glass, made me stay. "It's dry reading," I said, moving closer. "Even for lawyers." She turned then, and I saw her properly for the first time. 41 years old, though she looked both younger and older somehow. Younger in the way she moved, fluid and careful. Older, in her eyes dark, intelligent, impossibly sad. "You're Ryan Torres," she said. "James mentioned you, says you're brilliant." Dangerous? His word, not mine. A ghost of a smile. He said, "You think 3 moves ahead of everyone else. That you see patterns where others see chaos." She paused, studying me with clinical precision. "Is that true?" I should have deflected. Instead, I told her the truth. I see patterns everywhere. In case law, in human behavior, in the way people hold themselves when they're lying. I met her eyes. In the way someone stands at a window at 11 p.m. when they're supposed to be somewhere else. The silence that followed was heavy with something I didn't have a name for yet. Rain drummed against the glass. Somewhere in the building, a radio played soft jazz. Miles Davis. Blue. In green. "I should go," she said, but didn't move. "You should," I agreed, and stayed exactly where I was. She walked toward the door, then stopped. "Ryan, do you believe in patterns that we're not supposed to see?" I didn't have to think about my answer. "Yes." She nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed something she'd been afraid to acknowledge. Then she left, and I stood there listening to the rain and wondering what I'd just started. The pattern revealed itself gradually, like a case building piece by piece. She came back the following Tuesday. Same time, same window, different excuse. This time it was a medical malpractice case James was handling. She asked intelligent questions about liability, about burden of proof. Her hands wrapped around a paper cup of tea from the break room, steam rising in the cold air conditioning. "Peppermint," she said when she caught me looking. "I can't drink coffee after 8 p.m. anymore. Age catching up with me." "You're not old," I said without thinking. "I'm 13 years older than you, Ryan," she said, it matter-of-factly. "James mentioned your age at dinner last week, said I should be nice to you because you remind him of himself at 28. A pause. "You don't remind me of James at all." I wanted to ask what I reminded her of instead, but the question felt too dangerous. So I asked about her work instead, emergency medicine, the organized chaos of the ER, the weight of life and death decisions made in seconds. She talked, and I listened. Her voice changed when she spoke about medicine, more animated, more alive. She described the rush of trauma, the satisfaction of diagnosis, the grief of losing patients. "We're not so different," she said. "You find patterns in law. I find them in bodies and disease. We're both trying to solve puzzles that don't want to be solved." "What puzzle are you trying to solve right now?" I asked. She went very still. The question hung between us, too personal, too probing. "How to be grateful for a life that feels like it's happening to someone else?" she said finally. So quietly I almost missed it. I reached out and touched her hand where it rested on the table. Just for a second. Just long enough for her to know she wasn't alone. She pulled away, but not immediately. The third Tuesday, it was pouring rain again. She arrived 15 minutes late, her hair wet despite the umbrella. Water droplets clung to her coat, caught the fluorescent light like tiny diamonds. "I'm sorry," she said, breathless. "There was an accident on the expressway. 5-car pileup. I couldn't just—" She stopped, shook her head. "You came from the hospital?" I asked. understanding. She'd been there, in the ER, dealing with the aftermath, and then she'd come here. To me, I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere that wasn't home. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and something shifted. I grabbed paper towels, handed them to her. She dried her face, her hands, moving mechanically. "Your hair is still wet," I said. "It's fine. You'll catch cold?" I stepped closer, close enough to smell the rain on her skin, the faint scent of hospital soap and something floral that was purely her. I took another paper towel and, very gently, dried the rain from her hair. She froze. Didn't pull away, didn't move, barely breathed. I could hear her heart beating, or maybe it was mine. The paper towel was rough against the silk of her hair, and my hand shook slightly. When I was done, I stepped back, but not far. "Ryan." My name on her lips was a warning and a prayer. "We can't." "I know. James is your mentor. He trusts you." "I know. I'm married. I took vows." The last sentence came out differently than the others. Not matter of fact, but strained. Like saying it out loud made it real in a way she'd been avoiding. I saw something flicker across her face, guilt, maybe, or the first real acknowledgement of what we were doing. She looked down at her left hand, at the platinum band with its small diamonds, twisted it once, twice. "I stood in a church," she said quietly, still looking at her ring. "I promised before God and witnesses that I would love him, honor him, forsake all others. I meant it then. I really did." She finally looked up at me. "Does that matter? That I meant it once?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Then why?" Her voice cracked. "Why do I keep coming back here? I could have lied." Instead, I told her another truth. "Because you see the pattern too, and you're tired of pretending you don't." She stared at me for a long moment. Then, without a word, she gathered her things and left. But the next Tuesday, she came back. We didn't talk about what I'd said. We fell into a new pattern, one even more dangerous than the last. She brought coffee from the expensive place downtown, Ethiopian pour-over with notes of blueberry and chocolate. I brought case files. We sat closer now, our knees almost touching under the table. "Tell me about this one," she'd say, pointing to a brief. And I would talk about tort reform, about medical liability, about the intersection of law and medicine. She'd ask questions that made me think, challenge assumptions, point out logical flaws with surgical precision. Once, she fell asleep. It was nearly 2 a.m., and she'd come straight from a double shift. One moment she was reading, and the next her head was tilted back, lips slightly parted, breathing deep and even. I should have woken her. Instead, I sat there and watched her sleep for 45 minutes, memorizing the curve of her cheekbone, the flutter of her eyelids, the way her hand curled against her chest. When she woke, she looked disoriented. "How long?" "Not long," I lied. She checked her watch and swore softly. "James will be awake soon." She gathered her things hastily, not meeting my eyes. At the door, she paused. "Ryan, this has to stop." "Okay, I mean it. It's not fair. We're not children. We know better." "Yes," I agreed. "We know better." She left. I stayed until dawn, watching the city wake up and wondering how something that felt so right could be so wrong. She didn't come back the next Tuesday, or the one after that. For 3 weeks, the library was empty, except for me and my cases and the ghost of peppermint tea. I told myself it was better this way, safer, saner. I threw myself into work, stayed late every night. Then, on the 4th Tuesday, at 10:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. I missed the coffee. I stared at the screen for 30 seconds. Finally settled on library. 11. She was there at 10:59, 2 cups of Ethiopian pour-over in hand, her eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying. We didn't talk about the 3 weeks of silence. We sat down at our table, it was ours now, undeniably, and pretended everything was normal. But it wasn't normal. Because this time, when our hands brushed, reaching for the same file, we didn't pull away immediately. This time, when she laughed at something I said, I let myself admire the way her whole face transformed. This time, when the clock struck midnight and Miles Davis played on her phone, we both acknowledged what we were doing. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "We should stop." "But you're not going to suggest that we do," Are you? I looked at her. At the intelligence in her eyes, the sadness, the hope she was trying to hide. She nodded slowly. Neither am I. And there it was. The truth we'd been dancing around. We weren't stopping. We were falling. And neither of us was reaching for the parachute. The almost kiss happened 3 weeks later. It was late November, and the city had turned cold. She arrived wearing a cashmere coat burgundy. Expensive. Probably a gift from James. She'd had wine with dinner. I could smell it on her breath when she leaned close to point something out in a case file. We were discussing a medical malpractice case, and she got animated the way she always did. Her hands moved when she spoke, painting pictures in the air. At some point, she turned to make a point, and her face was suddenly inches from mine. We both froze. I could count her eyelashes from this distance, could see the tiny scar above her left eyebrow, could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Ryan, she breathed. Not a warning this time. A question. I leaned in just slightly, just enough to close the distance another inch. Her eyes fluttered closed. Her lips parted. Then her phone rang. We jerked apart like we'd been electrocuted. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, stared at the screen. It's James. Answer it, I said, my voice rough. She did. Walked to the far side of the library. Hi, honey. When she hung up, she didn't come back to the table. She stood there, her back to me, shoulders shaking. Natalie, I have to go, she said it to the window. I'm sorry. I can't, I have to go. She left her coffee behind. Left the case files. Left me sitting there with the ghost of what almost happened. I poured her coffee down the sink and told myself this time she really wouldn't come back. But I was wrong. She came back 2 days later, on a Thursday, which broke our pattern. I was there anyway. I was always there now. We need to talk, she said from the doorway. I looked up. She looked wrecked, hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. Okay, I said carefully. She sat down, but not in her usual chair. She chose the one across the table, putting distance between us. I've been married to James for 11 years. We were happy once, I think. She twisted her wedding ring. He's a good man. Successful, respected, kind in his way. He doesn't cheat, doesn't drink too much, doesn't hit. She laughed bitterly. The bar is so low for good men, isn't it? I didn't answer. We have separate bedrooms now, she continued, clinical. Have for 2 years. He says it's because of my schedule. Or maybe we're just two people who built a life together and then forgot why. She finally looked at me. I don't love him anymore, Ryan. But I'm comfortable. I'm secure. Her voice cracked. And I'm so fucking lonely I could scream. The confession hung between us, raw and painful. I'm not asking you to save me, she said quickly. I'm a grown woman who's made her own choices. But what I feel when I'm with you? She stopped, struggling. You make me feel seen, not Dr. Chen or Mrs. Bradford, just Natalie. And I haven't felt that way in so long I'd forgotten it was possible. I moved around the table slowly. She didn't tell me to stop. I crouched beside her chair. I see you, I said simply. She looked at me, waiting for more. That's it. I see you. A pause. Then, that's enough? For now, she made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. You're 28. You should be with someone uncomplicated. Someone who doesn't come with 11 years of baggage and a husband who controls your career. I don't want uncomplicated. Ryan, I want you. All of it. She stared at me. Then she stood abruptly, putting space between us. We can't, even if I wanted to leave James. The fallout would be, she pressed her hands to her face. He'd destroy you. Your career, your reputation, everything. And I'd be the cliché, the older predator. The bored housewife preying on the young associate. Her voice turned bitter. They wouldn't see it as love. Ryan, they'd see it as a midlife crisis with collateral damage. I know. Then why are we doing this? I stood up, moved closer. Because the pattern we're following might lead somewhere terrible, but it might also lead somewhere we're supposed to be. She looked up at me, and I saw the moment she surrendered. If we do this, she said slowly, we do it knowing the odds. We do it knowing it will probably end badly. Her voice dropped. We do it anyway. She reached up, cupped my face in her hands. Are you absolutely sure you want this? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. I didn't let her finish. I kissed her. She tasted like peppermint tea in hesitation. Her hands slid from my face to my hair, pulling me closer. It wasn't gentle. It was 11 weeks of restraint, breaking like a dam. She made a sound in the back of her throat, desperate, needy, and I swallowed it, deepened the kiss. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Her lipstick was smeared, her hair had come loose, and she looked more alive than I'd ever seen her. I've never been more sure of anything, I said. She laughed, soft and slightly broken. God help us both. What followed was 3 months of stolen moments and escalating risks. We met in hotel rooms with views we never looked at. In her car in parking garages downtown. Once, in my apartment, a risk so reckless we both knew it was stupid even as we took it. Afterward, lying tangled in my sheets, she traced patterns on my chest. Tell me something true. What do you want to know? So I told her. About growing up poor in South Phoenix, about my mother working 3 jobs, about the scholarship that saved my life, about the chip on my shoulder that drove me to work twice as hard to prove I belonged. That's why you see patterns, she said thoughtfully. You had to learn to read people to survive. I pulled her down for a kiss instead of answering. James noticed something was different. Of course he did. He was a good lawyer, trained to read people. Natalie seems happier lately, he mentioned one day in his office. We were reviewing a case, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. More like her old self. I kept my expression neutral. That's good. I think she might be seeing someone. He said it casually, watching me. Waiting. A therapist, I mean. She's been coming home late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Says she's at the library or the gym. But I found a receipt for one of those high-end coffee places. He smiled, but something in his eyes was calculating. I'm glad. She's been so isolated. It's good for her to have something for herself. I nodded, swallowed the guilt that threatened to choke me. Yeah, good for her. But something in the way he'd said it, the slight pause before therapist, the way his eyes had stayed on my face, should have warned me. James Bradford didn't make casual observations. Every word was calculated, every silence meaningful. I just didn't see it yet. That night, I told Natalie what James had said. We were in a hotel room in Scottsdale. She went very still. He suspects. No, he doesn't. If he suspected, he wouldn't have told me. Unless he's gathering evidence, she said quietly. That's what James does. He doesn't confront until he has all the pieces. He builds his case brick by brick, and then he buries you with it. Natalie, we need to be more careful. Or, I said slowly, you could leave him. She turned to stare at me. What? Leave him. File for divorce. Stop hiding. And watch him destroy you? No. She shook her head. I won't let you throw your future away for me. That's my choice. She looked at me with something like despair. You say that now? But what happens in 5 years when you resent me for the career you could have had? I wanted to argue, but she wasn't wrong. So what do we do? She reached for my hand, laced our fingers together. We keep being careful. We keep stealing these moments. And we hope. Her voice broke. We hope it's enough, but it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. The end came on a Tuesday, of course. I was at the office late when Natalie texted, James at partner's dinner. Can you meet? My place? 9 p.m. Her place. We'd never risked that before. But I went anyway. The house was in Paradise Valley. She answered the door in jeans and a silk blouse, barefoot, her hair down. He won't be back until after midnight, she said, pulling me inside. We didn't make it upstairs. We ended up in her kitchen marble countertops and Viking appliances. I lifted her onto the island, stepped between her knees, kissed her like I was trying to memorize the taste of her. Bedroom. She gasped against my mouth. We made it to the stairs before we stopped again, pressed against the wall, hands everywhere, breathing ragged. Ryan. And then, from downstairs, don't stop on my account. The voice was calm, almost conversational. We froze. James stood in the foyer, still in his suit from the dinner. He wasn't shouting, wasn't red-faced with anger. He simply stood there, looking at us with the same expression he wore when reviewing a contract, detached, analytical, cataloging every detail. Natalie started, her voice shaking. He held up one hand. Not aggressively, just a small gesture that commanded silence. I'm going to pour myself a drink. Scotch? I think. The McAllen, 18. Then we're going to have a conversation. He walked past us toward the study, his footsteps measured, unhurried. Take a moment to make yourselves presentable. I'll wait. Natalie and I looked at each other, both of us shaking. This was worse than anger. This was the cold precision of a man building a case. We went to the study, found James sitting behind his desk in his house, where he held all the power. He'd poured 3 glasses of scotch, slid 2 across the desk toward the chairs opposite him. Sit, he said. Not a request. We sat. James took a sip of his scotch, savoring it. The silence stretched. 1 minute. 2. He seemed content to let it grow, to let the tension build until it was unbearable. Finally, he spoke. How long? Natalie opened her mouth, but James looked at me. I asked you, Ryan. How long? 3 months, I said. 3 months. He nodded slowly, as if confirming a calculation. And in those 3 months, how many times did you sit in my office? How many times did I mentor you, advise you, trust you with sensitive cases? He didn't wait for an answer. 47 times, I counted. The specificity was chilling. James, please, Natalie, tried again. I'm not speaking to you yet, he said, still looking at me. I'm curious about something. Ryan, when did you decide? Was it that first night in the library? Or had you been planning it longer? Saw an opportunity, perhaps? The lonely wife of the senior partner. A way to advance your career? Or at least make it interesting? It wasn't like that, I said. No? He leaned back in his chair. Then what was it like? Enlighten me. I love her. The words came out before I could stop them. Simple. Irrevocable. James's expression didn't change. But something flickered behind his eyes. Love. How remarkably convenient. He turned to Natalie. And you? Do you love him? She met his gaze steadily. Yes. James took another sip of scotch, set the glass down with a soft click. I felt the blood drain from my face. The conversation in his office, the comment about the therapist. It hadn't been an observation, it had been a test, a trap set by a master litigator, and I had walked right into it without hesitation, my neutral expression probably confirming everything he'd suspected. The coffee receipts were just the beginning. James continued, watching my realization dawn with something like satisfaction. There were other signs. Late texts you deleted, perfume you didn't wear at home, that particular brightness you get when you're happy, the one I haven't seen in years. He paused. I hired an investigator 6 weeks ago. He's been very thorough. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. 53 photographs, James continued, his voice still eerily calm. Hotel registrations, credit card receipts, a very complete dossier. He opened a desk drawer, pulled out a manila folder, slid it across the desk. I was going to use this in the divorce proceedings. Make sure I kept the house, the investments, everything. Make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of woman you are, Natalie. Natalie stared at the folder like it was a snake. But then I thought, James continued, what would that accomplish? I'd get my revenge. Yes. I'd destroy both of you. Certainly. Ryan's career would be over before it really began. Your reputation at the hospital would be ruined. But would it make me feel better? He looked at both of us. He stood up, walked to the window, stood there with his back to us, looking out at the pool lights reflecting on the water. I don't love you anymore, Natalie, he said to the window. I think I stopped loving you around the same time you stopped loving me. But we were comfortable. We were settled. And it was easier to pretend than to face the truth. He turned around. But I can't pretend anymore. And neither, it seems, can you. He walked back to the desk, picked up the manila folder, and in one fluid motion dropped it into the metal trash can beside his desk. Then he pulled out a lighter and set it on fire. We watched the photographs curl and blacken, smoke rising toward the ceiling. You're going to leave, Ryan, James said quietly, watching the flames. You're going to walk out of this house, get in your car, and drive away. Tomorrow morning, you'll receive an email from HR. Your termination will be effective immediately. I'll provide a neutral reference left to pursue other opportunities. Nothing more, nothing less. He turned to Natalie. And you're going to pack a bag. Take what you need for now. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce settlement. I'll be fair, you'll get your share. But I want you out of this house tonight. Natalie's voice broke. I'm not going to destroy you, he said. Either of you. But I'm also not going to make this easy. You wanted each other? Fine. You have each other. Now, live with it. He walked to the door of the study, opened it. You have 30 minutes? Then I'm calling the police to report trespassers. As I stood to leave, James caught my arm. His grip was firm, but not violent. I hope she's worth it, he said quietly. I hope, when you're working for some small firm making a third of what you could have made, when the whispers follow you both for years, when you realize that burning everything down for love sounds romantic until you're living in the ashes, I hope she's worth it. He let go of my arm and walked away. The office is on Roosevelt Street, third floor of a building that hasn't been renovated since the 82nds. The air conditioning rattles like it's dying. The ceiling fan wobbles when it spins. Through the window, I can see the coffee shop where Natalie and I meet every Tuesday morning. My desk is cheap laminate, not the mahogany I used to have. The computer is old, slow. The filing cabinet doesn't close properly. But there's a photo on the desk, Natalie and me at the Grand Canyon last month. Both of us windblown and laughing, and that's worth more than all the mahogany in Paradise Valley. Torres? My boss, Marco, not James, sticks his head in. ICE is moving on that family in Guadalupe. We need to be in court in an hour. I'm ready, I say, grabbing my briefcase. It's a hand-me-down from Marco, worn leather with scratches that tell stories I'll never know. 2 years ago, I carried a briefcase that cost $3,000 and represented pharmaceutical companies in malpractice suits. Now I carry this one and represent families who can't afford to pay me. Most of our clients pay in tamales and gratitude and the knowledge that we kept them from being torn apart. The money is terrible. The hours are worse. The cases are heartbreaking more often than not. I've never been happier. Natalie meets me for lunch at the taco truck on the corner. She's in scrubs still doing ER work. But at County now instead of the prestigious private hospital. The pay is less. The hours are brutal. The politics are exhausting. But she says she's helping people who actually need help. And there's something in her eyes now that wasn't there before. Freedom. Maybe. Or purpose. Or just the absence of pretending. How was court? She asks, stealing a bite of my carnitas. We won. Family stays together. Good. She smiles. And it's the same smile I first saw in the library 2 years ago. A sleek black Mercedes pulls up to the curb nearby. The tint is dark, the engine purrs like a predator. For a split second, Natalie's hand freezes halfway to her mouth, the taco suspended in midair. I feel my own muscles tense, an instinctive flinch ingrained over 3 months of looking over our shoulders, amplified by 6 months of divorce proceedings where James's lawyer appeared in a car just like that one. The Mercedes idles for a moment too long. The driver's window is up. We can't see inside. Natalie's breathing has gone shallow. My hand moves unconsciously to my phone, as if I need to document something, protect something. Then the car pulls away, merging into traffic. Just someone picking up an order from the taqueria next door. We both exhale. The ghost is gone, but the reflex remains. It probably always will. Sorry, Natalie says quietly, setting down her taco. Her hand is shaking slightly. Don't be, I say, and mean it. This is part of the cost. The hypervigilance. The way certain cars, certain suits, certain voices in restaurants make us both tense. The way we still check mirrors, still lower our voices in public, still carry the habit of looking over our shoulders even though there's nothing left to hide. We don't talk about James much. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Natalie got half the savings in her car. James kept the house, his reputation, and his fury, wrapped in professional courtesy. We run into him sometimes. Phoenix is a small city for lawyers. He nods, we nod back, and we all pretend we're strangers. Maybe we always were. Regrets? I ask, like I always do. She looks at me, really looks at me, the way she did that, first night. About the way it happened? Yes. About the people we hurt? Every day. She reaches across the cheap plastic table, takes my hand. Her fingers are still trembling slightly from the Mercedes scare, but her grip is firm. About you? Never. It's not a fairy tale. We didn't ride off into the sunset. We drove off into the sunset in a used Honda Civic with a check engine light that won't turn off, headed toward a life that's harder and messier and more real than anything we had before. but it's ours. Built on honesty instead of lies, on choice instead of obligation, on love instead of comfort. Are you absolutely sure you want this? She asks sometimes, when the bills are tight and the whispers still follow us, and the weight of what we destroyed presses down, when black Mercedes sedans make us both flinch. And I always give her the same answer. I've never been more sure of anything. Some patterns are worth following, even when they lead somewhere dangerous, even when they cost everything, even when the ghosts of what you destroyed still haunt you at taco trucks on Tuesday afternoons. We followed ours, and here we are, not in Paradise Valley, in the rattling air conditioning and cheap laminate and reflexive fear that someone might be watching, but we're here together. Still holding hands across plastic tables? Still choosing each other? Every single day? Despite the cost? And that's enough.